This is Gemara and Yoma Daf Lamid Gimel. All the learning for this month of Sivan, the month of Kabbalah Satayra, should be a tremendous choshidach for Yisrael Chayim and Devaira. Mirza Hashem, it should go very smoothly in Shavain, Dezivag Hagain, Bekarayv Mamish, as well as the rest of our Chalim, of course, Rivka Bas Vesheva, Naftali Sivan, Michal Esther, and many women, Chayim and Sarj, some Sivan raised the Sarbas Kanandali, the Basim, Chayser, Yisrael Ben Mindel, the birth of Shavlei, Shamas Amir, Shavik, Shulchana, Shmo Ben Tila, Dinim Ben Chanarizam, Chay Basmina, Liber Rachabas Tavia Musa, Dinayim Machinu Mindol, Sivan Vega Divad Michal and Deluva Machamendo Ben Toiva Besaich Shar Chayli Yisrael, as well as also a Schloshid of Atalei Abbas Ita. We pick it up, we're on Amid Beis, we're middle of the Kohen Gadol getting dressed. How many times he washed his hands, how many times he goes to the mikvah. We learned Alach L'Maish Sinai, we learned that there are two different potential Mekairais, that he goes to the mikvah 5 times, he gets dressed 10 times. We concluded yesterday that Rav Acha and Rav Chisda cannot hold of each other, the way that they explained Rabbi, because if not, it'll come out that it's going to be 15, just to explain, because it would be 2 times you'd wash his hands when he's undressed, and 1 time again after he gets dressed, which would equal into 15 washings, which we know is not true, and therefore says the Gemara, that Rav Acha the Rava told Rav Ashi that Rav Chisda and Rav Acha cannot hold of each other. Says the Gemara, we're now 4 lines of the wide lines on Lamed Beis and Beis. If you lost the Talmid Kartzai, said they bring the carbon Talmid, the Kohen Gadol does the Shechita, he starts the Shechita, and then the next Kohen finishes up the Shechita, Kohen Gadol catches the blood and continues. Says the Gemara, my Kartzai, what does this word Kartzai mean? Amar Ula Lishta de Katalahu. You know what it means? It means killing. It means the Kohen Gadol does the Shechita, slaughters the animal. Amar Rav what is the meaning of the pasuk that says as follows? Egla yefei Pia Mitzrayim Keret Mitzafain Ba. The Mitzrayim is very fair, but the Kerets from the north is coming. What does that mean? My mashma. Where do we know? What is this referring to? Says the Gemara, the Targum Rav Yosef, as Rav Yosef explained, Malka Yoei Have Mitzrayim. The Malka, the queen, the kingdom of Mitzrayim was a fair kingdom. But a lot of murderous people, a lot of people that killed came from the north. Yeson Ale came upon Mitzrayim. So again, this is another raya that the word karutz comes from the word to mean killing, and that's the raya in our Mishnah. The Kohen Gadol did the kritza. What does that mean? That means the Kohen Gadol, kartzu, started doing the shechita. Says the Gemara, kartzu bekama. When the Mishnah said that the Kohen Gadol does the kartzu, he starts the killing, he starts the shechita. Says the Gemara, how many pipes? We know that there's the kan and the vesha, there's 2 basic big simanim. Does he go through both? Does he go through one? Does he go through the majority? What's going on? Says the Gemara, Amar Ula Biroiv Shnayim. He got to go through the majority of 2 of them. The majority of the kana and the vesh, the 2 windpipes. Says the Gemara, Afri Shlagish Savar Brave Shaim. Rish Lakish agrees to Rabbi Yochanan on this one. How do we know? The Amar Rish Lakish says Rish Lakish Chimi Achash Sheninu Rubai Shalachan Me Echad Kamayu. Once we learned that the Roiv, the majority of one of the pipe, is like cutting the whole thing. When you go through Roiv, it's as if he did the whole thing. Why did the Mishnah have to teach us that when you do the shechita, you have to do the roiv by the bird, and we have to do the roiv of both of them by the animal? You know why? The reason is because we learned that one person starts, the other person finishes. So what would we think this brayso means? I would have thought it means loy meirik puzzle. Let's say the other kohen did not finish it. The kohen gadol starts, and then it says give it to someone else, and he's meirik. Let's say that other person does not do the meirik, does not finish. You would have thought yachal ye puzzle. Yachal. Again, Yachaloi Merik, you would have thought Ye Puzzle. Yachaloi Merik, Ye Puzzle. Says more, 1 second. You really thought if you did that would be puzzle? MK, Navale Avoida, then it would be called an Avoida. Meaning, anytime something's an integral, is critical. If you don't do it, it's called an Avoida. Says the Gemara, 1 second. You just told me the Havamina was that it would be puzzle if it's done by someone else. MK, Navale Avoida Bacher. Comes out that on Yom Kippur, there's a different Kohen performing the Avoida. Vitanya, we learned in the right It all has to be done with the Kohen Gadol. So again, we're in the middle of explaining how much does the Kohen Gadol have to start off doing the Shechita, one or two of the Simanim. But the Gemara got a bit tied up in the middle over there. The Gemara says 1 second. But if someone else gets involved, it's called an Avaida, then we know the Kohen Gadol has to be the one to only do the Avaida. Explains the Gemara, this is what Reish Lakish means, Yachli Apostle Midrabanan. You would think that there would be a Psul Midrabanan moving along from the Gimel. Amad Aleph, Lakach Shaninu, therefore I learned Rav Echad, Ba'oif, Rav Shnayim, B'Behema, majority of 1 by the Oif, the bird, majority of 2 by the animal, and then the Shechita is kosher. This is what it teaches us, that even midrabanan, it is kosher. But what do we see? We see that according to Reish Lakish, you have to cut off the majority of both of the pipes, the kana and the veshet, in order for the shechita to be kosher. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Now you just told me that if you didn't do this, it's not even basal midrabanan. The obvious question. So what do you do in the Meirik? Again, if the Kohen Gadol comes and does 2, and we're saying now you don't really have to do anything else, so why does the other Kohen have to come and finish it up? It's already done. Answers the Gemara, you're right. Well, mitzvah l'meirik. It's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to complete the shechita so that the blood flows out nicely. It's a mitzvah. You're right. Without it, the shechita would be kosher. But there's a special mitzvah for the other Kohen to finish the shechita to let the blood fly out nicely. Says the Gemara. Now we're going to quote a brisa. Hopefully, actually, I'm sorry, it should be, it's a brisa. Hopefully, it's a bit familiar. At least you've seen it somewhere in the Siddur. If you don't say it every day, maybe this will be a nice reason to start saying it. But says the Gemara, Baye Misader Ma'aracha. Now, we're going to go into the order of what goes on to the Beis HaMikdash. Says Abaye, what was the order? Ma'aracha Mishmei Gemara. He said the order of the Maracha, based on a Gemara, based on a tradition of Mesaira, Va'aliba Dabashal, according to Dabashal. And as follows, Maracha Gedayla Kedemes La'aracha Shniya Shal Kedairis. What was first? The big fire on the Mizbeach. Then comes the small fire. Maracha Shniya Shal Kedairis comes before Kedem Siddur Shnei Gizrei Eitzim. Then came those 2 blocks of wood. We'll show some pictures. Siddur Shnei Gizrei Eitzim Kodem Dishon Mezbeach HaBenimi comes before the clearing away the ash. Dishon Mezbeach HaBenimi Kodem Latavas Chamesh Neiros is setting up the Menorah. But Tavas Chamesh Neiros Kodem L'Dama Tamid comes before the Tamid, V'Dama Tamid Kodem Tavas Shnei Neiros. The Shtei Neiros, hopefully it should be a bit familiar. We learned this. There are 7 candles on the Menorah, but they first did the 5 and then they did the 2 with the Tamid in the middle. But Tavas Shnei Neiros, that comes what? Kodem is the Ketairis for the Ketairis Kodem Le'Evarim, the burning of the limbs, Evarim the Mincha, the Karban Mincha, Mincha L'Chavitin, the Chavitin, the Kohen Gadol, the Chavitin, the Nesachim, the Libation, the Nesachim, Musafim, Musafim, the Bazichan, the 2 Bazichan on the Lachem Apanim, those 2 golden spoons, Bazichan, the Tamish Albein, are Abayim. And where do we know this all from? Shenemar, it says in the Torah, Victor Alel, Chalvei Hashlamim. And from there we learn, what does it mean? Chalvei Hashlamim, Alel, on it, Hashlamim Kolar Karbanois, on it, on the Karban Tamish Albayker, of the morning Karban Tamid, you should complete all the other Karbanos. And therefore we learn that no other karbanos can be brought after you bring the karban tamid shel bein arabai, and those are the bookends, the karban tamid. Before we continue, which we're going to dissect this brisa, let's just show some beautiful pictures. That's the ma'aracha gedolah, the big tremendous fire in the middle of the mizbeach, and you see next to the ma'aracha shniya shel ketayres, and now you see there was 2 stages. There was a setting up of the wood, and then there was the burning. The ma'aracha shniya shel ketayres is kaidem. That's the Gizri Shnei Gizri Eitzim. You see over here the Kohen holding these 2 blocks of wood that he would add on, and that is that. Says the Gemara, Amar Mar. Let's go through the daily avodah of the Beis Hamikdash, exactly what happened. And of course, we should always remember, but let's just remind ourselves that when we learn it, it's as if we're Mekayim it. So let's go. We're walking into the Beis Hamikdash. Amar Mar Ma'aracha Gedayla Kedem Zamaracha Shniya Shel Kedairis. The big fire came before the smaller fire. We know, and where do we know the Tani learns in a brayse? It says that it is the oila that is brought on the Al Mike Dal Mizbeach Kol Halayla on the whole night. Zuma Aracha Gedoyla, that is the large fire. Then the pasuk continues. Ve'isha Mizbeach tu Karboy, and the fire of the Mizbeach should be on top of it. Zuma Aracha Shniya Shal Gedayres, that teaches us that first comes the big fire, then comes the small fire. Says the Gemara, how do you know? Ve'ipachana, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe the Maracha Shniya Shal Gedayres, the smaller fire of the Gedayres comes first. Explains the Gemara, Mistaver the Maracha Gedayla Adif. The larger fire is better. Why? Shkin kaparasa meruba. It gives a larger kapara. Obviously, a bit of a reminder back to yesterday's daf when we saw that the big days off at some level were better because it gives more kapara. Says the Gemara, the big fire, the mizbech is the same way. It gives more kapara. What's the Gemara's question? No, maybe we could say the opposite. Maracha shniya adifa. Why? Shkin machnisin mimena lifnim. Says the Gemara, 1 second. When they went into lifnim, where did they get the coals from? From the second fire, from that little fire. So maybe there's an intrinsic quality of that little fire that it's even better for the fact that its coals go all the way. Lifnaiv lifnim to the Kodesh HaKodashim. Answers the Gemara, it's better when you give more kapara. Teres number 1. Therefore, the big fire comes before the big marach, the big fire and fire comes before the smaller one. Viba Yisima says the Gemara, I'll tell you a second teretz. Eloi mishkach aitzim the maracha shniya milo mail me'aracha gedayla. Very interesting halacha. Let's say you couldn't find any coals on that little fire. Let's say you go the maracha shniya shal gedayres. You go to that small fire for the gedayres, and there's no coals there, and it's the kohen gadol. It's Yom Kippur, and he got to go inside, but he doesn't have any coals. What's he gonna do? He's gonna take the coals from the larger one. So we see that at some level, the larger pyre, that larger piece of wood, is at some level also fit to go to the Kodesh HaKodashim. So it's not going to be a question showing us that the Maracha Shniya is better, because we see that really the Maracha Gedayla as well could be brought the coals for the Kodesh HaKodashim. Says the Gemara, okay, let's go to stage number 2. So that was number 1. Then the Maracha Gedayla came before the smaller Maracha, the smaller fire. Now Maracha Shniya Shal Gedayra is Kedem as the Seder Shnei Gedri Eitzim comes before the 2 pieces of wood. Minalin, where do we know that from? The Chsiv, it says in the Torah, Ubir ala koyin eitzim ba'boiker. Says in the pasuk that the koyin should burn on it wood each and every morning. Says the Gemara, Oleha. We learn how they should be put on it, that those 2 pieces of wood should be put on the large fire, but not on the chaverta, the smaller fire. But what is that? It shows us that the chaverta, the other fire, already exists. It shows that the smaller Maracha Shniya Shal Gedayres is already set up, and therefore it's just pointing out that the Maracha Gedayla comes first. Says the Gemara, 1 second, is that true? What does it mean, allow? You know what it means? It just tells us they got to put those pieces of wood on the fire. We're using allow to teach me that the other fire was still there, the smaller fire. Says Gemara, no. You know what you need allow for? To teach me. Take those pieces of wood and put them on the fire. Says the Gemara, it says the word allow 2 times, so we can learn out both. Okay, so that was stage number 2. Now we're up to number 3. Seder Shnei Gedrei Eitzim comes when? For cleaning out the inside mizbeach. Says the Gemara. Even though here it says every morning, in the other pasuk it says says the Gemara, still that which is a machshir, that which prepares, is more important than the other babaikir, which was written with regard to the removal of the ash, the trumas hadesh and the separating of the ash. Says the Gemara, no, it's more important to first have the wood and the fires set up and then remove the ash. Says the Gemara, machshir mai niu. What is the hachshara? What is the preparation we're talking about? Shnei gizrei eitzim, the arranging of those 2 blocks of wood. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. But you told me that where do those 2 blocks of wood go? On the big fire. So they have nothing to do with the ketairis at all. Because where do the ketairis come from? Where do the coals come from? The smaller fire. Says the Gemara, 3 different terutim. Amar Rav Yirmiyah. Shom eitzim. No, it means any wood. All wood is the same. Teretz number 2. Ravina Amar Hayil Beischa Maracha Gaimer. No, you know why? You started with the big fire. You got to finish it. Rav Ashi Amar Yiloi Mishkach Eitzim Maracha Shniya. Again, like we saw before, let's say there would not be any wood. Milamayel Maracha Daila. You would take from the larger fire, and therefore we have to put the Shnei Gizri Eitzim is at some level considered a preparation for the ketairis. Again, the question was, what did that have to do with preparing the ketairis? It's different fire. We're showing that they are connected, and therefore it's considered preparing even for the ketairis. Now we're up to the next stage, number 4. And the removal of the ash comes before the setting up of the menorah. My time, 3 lines to the bottom. Svara Layadana. I don't know why. That's a bias start. The bias says, that's what I heard, leave it alone. Virava Amar Kirish Lakish. Rav says, no, like Rish Lakish, Rish Lakish, Ein Ma'avirin Ala Mitzvah. It's such an important rule, a rule that we've spoken about in the past. Says the Gemara, you know why? Because you can't pass over a mitzvah. And now the Gemara explains, what happens when you walk into the Heichal? What do you bump into first? Hopefully you bump into anything. What do you encounter first? You first hit the Mizbeach. The Tanya, like we learned in our Brayis, the Shulchan B'Tzava in the north. Moshech Menakoisel Shteyam is in Mechza, 2.5 amos off the wall. Menayer B'Daran in the south, Meshucha. Menakoisel Shteyam is in Mechza. Mizbeach Memutza V'Oimid Be'emsa. Mizbeach is smack in the middle. Moshech Labichot is a little bit out, Kimma a little bit, and therefore you hit the Mizbeach first. Before we show a picture, let's just see one more question. Says Gemara, 1 second. Maybe the Mizbeach should be smack in the middle between the Shulchan and the Menorah. We just had a Shulchan Menorah and the Mizbeach is a little bit up, and therefore you bump into the Mizbeach first. Says Gemara, why? Maybe you should have Shulchan, Mizbeach, Menorah all in one line. Says the Gemara, you know why? Keep with the Chsev, it says in the Torah, 7 lines to the top, Ha-Menorah noichach ha-Shulchan, has been noichach ha-B'sebina dechazu ha-adadi. You need to be that they could see each other. And this is the picture, as you see over here, you see the Shulchan on the right, 2.5 amos on the wall, you see the Menorah on the left, 2.5 amos on the wall, and you see the Mizbeach Hazav, the golden Mizbeach with the Ketores, smack in the middle, and that's where you're going to go bump into first, and that's the reason why that comes first. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava, Shma Mina Midreish Lakish, Avurei Da'ara Totafsa Aser. We see it is Aser to pass over the hand and go straight to your head. Hey Chiyavitz, what should you do? Medari Lataytasa, first you do Yadari, your arm. Of course, everyone knows that you put on tefillin shel yad first, and then litotasva, and then you put on the tefillin shel roish. And a little bit of a sidebar dim, but the same concept that you can't pass over. So just like you hit the shulchan, the menorah, the mizbeach, you do that first. So too the shel yad comes before the shel roish. But just to mention, obviously that's the reason you're not supposed to take out the shel roish first, because if you take out the shel roish first, you're supposed to put it on, and you can't put on the shel roish first because you got to put on the shel yad. And that's the reason why if one were to by accident take out the shel reish first, you cover it, and then you take out the shel yad and you put it on. It's not unpacking that you take out the shel reish, you take out the shel yad, you take out your towels, you set it all up, and then you start. Absolutely not. Towels first, you put it on. Shel yad, then shel reish. Do not take out lechatchila. Obviously, the shel reish should not be taken out before the shel yad is on your arm. Says the Gemara, the next stage of the avodah v'atavas chamish neiros kodem l'dam ha'tamid v'dam ha'tamid kodem l'atavas shnei neiros. So we have the 5 candles. Blood of the Tamid, 2 candles. My taimo, what is the reason that we split up the candles, the 5, the Dam Tamid, and then the 2? Amar Abaye, Ahu Ba'Boiker, Ba'Boiker. You know we learn it out from? It says by both those psukim, Ba'Boiker, Ba'Boiker, the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim, by the 2 blocks of wood. Deloi Tzrichi. We don't need it over there. We already know about the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim. As we learned before, that the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim comes before the removal of the ash. What's the reason? Because one is a preparation. We said it's more important to prepare the Mizbeach before you separate the ash. So we already know that the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim comes first. So why did the Torah have to say it? Shadinu la'acha, we place it to somewhere else. We apply it to what we're learning over here. That you first clear out the menorah, then you put on the dam of the Tamid. Chad shadi latavas chamesh neiros, delakad v'ladam ha'tamid. First teaches me that the 5 candles come before the dam ha'tamid. Then it teaches me that the tamid comes before the 2 candles. So the extra wording teaches me we get the 5 candles, cleaning them out and setting them up, the dam ha'tamid, then the remaining 2 candles. The Gemara explains further. It says Abaye, what does that mean that the 5 candles come before the tamid? The hacha tlasa vacha trey. Because over here in the Torah it says Ba'Boiker 3 times with regard to cleaning out the menorah, and with regard to the carbon tamid, it only says it 2 times. So therefore, it teaches me that what comes first? The 3 times. Therefore, Ba'Boiker 3 times comes first. You have to clear out the menorah first. Again, and then the Talmud comes for the two candles. Again, it says Babaikir two times, both by the two candles and by the carbon Talmud. So how do we know the carbon Talmud comes first? Says the Gemara, you know why? The carbon Talmud gives you a kapara, so that comes first. So we just learned that you get the first 5 candles. Why? Because it says Babaikir an extra time. We don't need it for the Shnei Kitzriyitzim. So we put it by the Menorah. So therefore we have 3 times it mentions Baikir by the 5 candles, 2 times by the Talmud, 3 beats 2, and therefore we set up the 5 before we do the carbon Talmud. Said the Gemara, how do we know the carbon Talmud? It comes before the final 2 candles. By both of them it says Babaikir 2 times. Explains the Gemara, no, because Kapara is Adif, and therefore the Dama Tamid comes before the 2 Menorah candles. Says the Gemara, he's not so happy. Ve'ema, how do you know what you're saying is right? Ve'ema, maybe one teaches me to clear out the Mizbeach. Then the Dama Tamid that comes first. Says the Gemara, the Halcha Atlasa, Vacha Trey. And then what's going to happen is, with regard to the removal of the ash, you left 3 times, and regarding to the Menorah, you left 2. V'chad shad l'damatam, and one teach me damatam, the next damatam is chamish neiros. Meaning, how do you know that the actual Babaikir teaches me that the 5 comes before the damatam and then the 2 candles? No, maybe put it on the dishan mizbeach, and maybe that comes first, and then comes the 5. Says the Gemara, Davel gav da'achatrei v'achatrei, still mechaber adif. So ask our Papa Dabayi, how do you know what you're saying is correct? Answers the Gemara, you know why? Imkein afsuke b'may mifasekes lehu. Because you know why? Because if you don't say like me, answer Abaye, what's going to separate them in Menorah? What did you just want to suggest? You want to suggest that you have the removal of the ash, then the carbon Talmud, and then the 5 candles. But wait. Between the 5 and the 2, what's separating them? Says the Gemara, this should hopefully be a bit familiar. Says Rish Lakish, why do you clear out the Menorah, then clear it out again? Why do you do 5 and then do 2? Says Rish Lakish, to make a buzz, to make it exciting. Shapirs, then it's not a question. Meaning, nothing separates it. You clear out the 5, you wait, you clear out 2. The whole purpose is just to make it exciting. So you don't need to have something in the middle. So then our Papa could be correct. Again, then we can see that Babaikir comes to teach us 1 for the removal of the ash, then for the Dama Talmud, and then the 5 candles. What splits the 5 and the 2? Nothing. It's just to give a bit of a buzz in the Beis HaMikdash. But El Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar Babaikir Chalku L'Shnei Bikarim Michael Meimar. Rabbi Yochanan learned out from the Torah that it's 2 separate avodos. There's the 5, and then there's the 2, so there has to be something in the middle separating it. So says the Gemara, according to Rav Papa, that would be impossible, and that's the reason why we know that Babaikir must teach me that the first one's teaching me that the 5 candles come first, then the Tamid, and then the final 2 candles. Again, the 5 candles come first, because now we're going to have 3 mentions of Baikir, then the Tamid, and then the final 2 candles, because it's more of a kapara from the Karban Tamid. Let's finish up. Says the Gemara. Again, now we're asking both on Abaye and Rav Papa. Omar Le, one more question and answer. Amar Le Ravina Le Rav Hashi. Hi Babaikir de eats a mimi out there? 1 second. The whole last 20 lines, 10 lines, we were busy asking Abaye and Rav Papa, assuming that Babaikir was extra. We don't need it for the Shnei Kitzriyitzim, and therefore we use it for something else. Says Ravina, what? Is that true? Is it extra? We need it for itself. The Kamar Achman and they can't. Nikadme l'maracha shnia shel ketayres. You know what we need it for? We need it to teach me that the Shnei Kitzriyitzim comes before the second buyer. So how do you know that the words are extra? Again, I'm sorry, it wasn't very clear. The words Babaikir, the Gemara just wanted to take out of context and to teach me to put it by the 5 candles, then the 2 candles. Says Ravina, I don't understand. You know what you need Babaikir? For itself, to teach me that the Shnei Kitzriyitzim, those 2 blocks, have to first be put on the big pyre, the big maracha, and then you have the maracha shniya shel kedayres. Omer le, so Rav Ashi responds to Ravina, V'lamiu kimna. Did we not already learn Oleho v'loya chaverta? Mechlal, these the chaverta that shows us that already is a chaverta. So you didn't need it. We already knew that it comes before the smaller fire. Must be that we could use it for our drasha. Says the Gemara, Maishna David Atam is Chamish Neiros Bereisha. I'm sorry, I know I said we'll stop. Let's go one more dot. How do we know that the 5 candles come first? Maybe first clear out the 2. Answers the Gemara, Kima de Ischabo, of it right. Once you start, you do majorities, you do 5. Benevet Shis, do 6. Amar Kra, you know why? Because it's about Tivu Esani Rois. Plural yakti renu. So for every time you clear out the candles, that has to be at least 2. So that's how you get 5 and 2. Says the Gemara about Tavishtei Neiros Kodemis like Tyrus. How do we know? Damar Kra by Tivos and Neiros V'Adar yakti renu. First you clean it out, and then it says yakti renu. Uktayris Eivarim, and that's what we're going to pick up tomorrow. That the Uktayris Eivarim will finish up this price of Abaye. We'll pick it up from here tomorrow.